I call the honourable member for Fairfax.
A question to the Treasurer. Under that great Liberal Prime Minister and founder of the Liberal Party, Sir Robert Menzies, the Australian economy had a debt level of 40% of GDP. Why does the government seek to shrink the money supply and domestic demand when our debt level is only 12% of GDP and the average OECD is 73% of GDP and Australia has a AAA credit rating?
To whom is the question? I call the honourable the Treasurer.
Well, I thank the honourable member for Fairfax for the question. If I remember correctly, I would think that Australia's debt level actually peaked at about World War II, associated with the costs associated with war. And from that period on, debt levels started to reduce. And Menzies was a great Prime Minister because he reduced the debt levels, just as this Prime Minister wants to reduce the debt levels, and just as the Howard government reduced the debt levels, because that's what Liberals do. We pay off the debt that Labor builds up, because we know it is hugely important not to leave the next generation of Australians with more debt. And if we continued on the path that Labor left, a legacy of deficit and debt, we would end up leaving every Australian in 10 years' time with $25,000 of debt for every man, woman and child in Australia. That's unacceptable, because great Liberals get on with the job of paying off debt. That's what we do. That's what Menzies did. That's what Howard did, and that's what Abbott's doing. We're getting on with the job of stopping the hemorrhaging and making sure we can pay down the debt. Because, as the member for Fairfax knows, you never want to end up in an economic trough. You don't want to end up in a trough. And because when you end up in a trough, you get yourself into trouble. And of course, if you keep spending money that you do not have, if you spend money that you do not have, or other people's money, which is even worse, you can end up in the trough. And from our perspective, we want Australia to be strong and robust. We want Australians to be prosperous, and the best way to do that is for Australia to live within its means. And the second thing you should do is understand this, that we cannot continue to put expenditure on the credit card. We cannot continue to build up deficits and debt that we cannot afford to repay over a long period of time. And that's why we have made the tough decisions, the difficult decisions, but the right decisions in the budget. Because ultimately, if we want to maintain the quality of life that Menzies helped to build, that Howard helped to build, that we want to build for the future, we have to live within our means.
I call the honourable